Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name's Clare, and this is the first of it's October now. October teachings, four Monday nights in October I'll be doing. And I thought this time I would just sort of do some general meditations, and not like sometimes there'll be a specific topic that I'll teach to, but I thought this time I'll just go through some general. It'll kind of follow what we call the Lam Rim, which translates as the path to enlightenment. And there's kind of, the idea is that to become enlightened, and I know we all didn't come here just thinking, oh, I might go there and learn how to be enlightened. We're here to learn meditation to help us calm our minds initially. But the Lam Rim sort of explains that to improve your mind and to get a sense of reality about everything, it's a slow process, and there are stages and steps through the path that you can develop. So I'll go through some of the different meditations that that build on each other. I'll just build over the weeks to some of the more intense, I suppose, talking about issues and how to deal with them. But so tonight, right at the beginning, we sort of talk about why we meditate, why even learn to meditate. And as I said, it's sort of to deal with stress or any other issues, or just general life. And we do sort of find in our lives that we're searching for happiness, but it's elusive, and whatever we do that we think is going to make us happy seems to kind of either be short-lived, or we can't even get there. We can't attain the things that we think that will make us happy. So Buddhism will say that the things that we invest in, so much of ourselves, are transitory, and that's the reason why we can't find any real happiness, and that happiness itself does exist, but more within looking inwards to our minds and controlling our minds. And that the happinesses that we find in life are real as well. They do exist, but unfortunately they are short-lived, so that by sort of trying to hold on to things or desiring things, we are bound to be left unsatisfied. So by looking at the mind and working with the mind, the Buddha explained how we can actually find some real inner peace and real happiness, no matter what the circumstances. So, and it doesn't mean that you give up things. It's not like saying, oh, well, okay, so friendships and possessions and all this stuff that ultimately isn't going to give us what we're searching for. It doesn't mean you give them up. It just means that you maybe have a different perspective on them. And in fact, you can find a perspective through meditation that you can actually enjoy things without having to cling on to them so much there, and understand that things are transient, and then it's easier to let them go. So you can have that happiness out of things without the angst that's involved. So I will start with, because we are here in a Buddhist place, I'll start with, before every teaching, we start with some prayers to just sort of settle the mind, and to bring the mind towards our goals. As Buddhists, we look to the Buddha as the example. He was a human being with all the same issues and problems that we have. Interesting that it was over 2,500 years ago and it all still makes perfect sense to us now. So that the Buddha actually had the same issues that he was dealing with and worked it out with a lot of hard work from his side of being initially a Hindu, growing up Hindu in a palace. I'll just quickly run over this for people that haven't heard the story before, but that the Buddha was born into a kingdom, a wealthy, I think his father was a king, and his father was very protective and he grew up with a lot of wealth and privilege, and his father protected him from the miseries of the outside world of ordinary life on the streets. And they were Hindu, so he was very interested in the Hindu practices, the Vedic practices. And then one day he sort of escaped from the palace and went out, perhaps with one of his minders, but he saw three things that had a profound effect on him. One was a sick person lying in the street sick. So another one was a very old person who was struggling, and a dead body. There was someone had died on the street, and so he was quite sort of taken aback and shocked and asked, was just like, why does this happen? And so he started questioning, why do people get sick? Why do people have to grow old? Why do people have to die? And got heavily involved in the Hindu teachings and took it as far as he could. I think he left he had a wife and a child, he left them, and it's not recommending to do that. He actually became enlightened and came back and taught his wife and child how to become enlightened as well. So it was for them. He was seeing that his wife would have to suffer, his child would have to suffer, his parents would have to suffer and die in the end. And he was really determined to see if there was a way through. And he came back and these people became enlightened as well. So he went off and did all the ascetic practices and starving himself, and eventually he was dying and a woman gave him some rice and milk, and it revived him, and it brought clarity to his mind as well, because his body had been revived. He was able to sort of think more clearly, and he realised that starving yourself and standing on one foot and doing all of the intense practices wasn't getting him where he needed to be. And this is part of the middle, when they talk about the middle way. It's sort of don't go to extremes of starving yourself or giving everything up and thinking, oh, this is going to make me happy, because it doesn't work that way. And he then went off on his own and meditated, and eventually, and his mates, he had 5 friends that he'd been sort of practicing with for many years, were a bit distressed at this, that he'd given up his practices, and he eventually sat down under the Bodhi tree in India, which is still there. There's still I think over the years they've taken cuttings and regrown it, but it's still directly from that tree, still exists in India, and you can go and visit it. It's quite amazing. There's a big stupa there, and the tree's kind of growing into the stupa, and it's quite special to go and visit. But anyway, so he sat down under the tree and said to himself, I'm not getting up until I reach the end point. And I think his mind would have been in such an amazing place that he could see that it was going to happen. He had clairvoyance by that stage. He would have been very, very clear and had absolute power over his ability to concentrate, and could see that it was just sort of, it was going to happen sort of thing. So he sat down and said, I'm not getting up. I think he sat there for 5 days, and there were all sorts of things. They were saying that there were all sorts of demons and temptations and all sorts of things happened to him while he sat there, and he was rock solid. And finally it happened. He sort of freed his mind completely. And the Tibetan word for Buddha is Sangye, or Sangye, and that means purified and filled with qualities. So he purified his mind of all negativities. He no longer had any desire, any anger, jealousy, pride. All of that had been cleared from his mind, and he was filled with love and compassion for all beings. And it was about doing this so that if I can do it, everyone else can do it. And it was about saving all sentient beings and teaching and doing it for their benefit that he was doing this. And that's how it's been handed down throughout the years, that you do this with the final intention of actually seeing the suffering and wanting to do something about it. So Buddhism would say that you can do something about the suffering. And that wish to do this in order to be able to benefit everyone else or all other beings. It's not just people, it's critters and insects and everything, and beings in other realms as well. That thought, to wish to do that, takes your mind there. It's that wish that actually takes you there. So with that wish you can become enlightened. So before you can do that, there's a lot of work to do. And it is about stabilising the mind. But first of all, I'll say this prayer. So that we say the prayer, and I read a lovely thing just yesterday, I think, and the thing about this is you can read the same things over and over, or you can read things and hear things, and it still works on you, or you hear things in a way that you didn't hear it before, or something makes sense and stuff. And I might have heard this before, but it was just explained really well. That the definition of mind is clear and knowing. Our mind is a clear space that reflects everything we experience. So that by contemplating the Buddha with your mind, you're actually incorporating the Buddha's mind into your mind. You're imprinting into your own mind, the enlightened mind. And that we all have this clarity, we all have this potential. And that's why we have all of these images that we meditate on. And that's not to say that that's any expectation of people to do that, but that's what you're doing. They're visual representations of enlightened states of mind. So when we start, this is a long story getting back to the point of saying this initial prayer, is we go for refuge to the Buddha and we generate this bodhicitta mind of wishing to benefit all other sentient beings. So it's all in this little prayer, and I'll just say it now. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma and the highest assembly from the virtuous merit that I collect by practicing giving and the other perfections. May I attain the state of a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So there's a lot more in that prayer that I have been through in the past, but we won't go into it tonight because it'll take me all night. It might, but when it says giving and the other perfections, that's one of the ways you start your practice, and one of the ways that you help your mind is with generosity. So giving to others, in that moment you're not thinking of yourself, and it starts to free your mind up from constantly me. And I will run through the perfections. So from giving, you develop a sense of ethics. By actually sort of giving to others, you start to think less of yourself. You're thinking of their happiness. When you're giving to someone, you want them to be happy. And it gives you joy when you give and someone else enjoys what you've given them. It actually gives you joy. So, it follows that really the more that you give, the more joy that you can bring to yourself, the more that you help others. And you give in different ways. You can give just by listening to someone, you can give with material things, you can give of your time. By doing these things with a positive, not doing it in a way that it's painful to you. You give what you're capable of giving. Because if it's difficult for you, or if you can't afford it, or if you're giving too much, or you haven't got time, or something like that, and and you're not doing it with your whole heart kind of thing, it's not going to help you. You might actually even get angry. You might get upset about what's happening, and you're not really giving. So you do it within your means and within your capabilities, with the idea that you want to actually give happiness to the others. And by doing that and thinking just a little bit less of yourself, you're more inclined to make better decisions. You're not thinking me in every situation. You might actually be thinking of others and think, oh, okay, well, that person can have the promotion or can have the last piece of cake or something like that. And you're not so stressed about it because you've begun with small things, and you get used to giving, and it gets easier. And then as that gets easier and you're making better decisions, you're feeling happier. It sort of works. You feel better about yourself and about the world, and you're not sort of so overly concerned about yourself. And you develop a sense of patience, so that when something goes wrong, it's a little bit easier to deal with. And patience is the antidote to anger. So if someone's making you really angry, and you're actually thinking of them, or you've been doing these practices, and you're just less inclined to have your buttons pressed. You're less inclined to get angry, and you develop patience, and you're sort of practicing these things. And as you become a little bit more patient, you realise, in the past I might have got really angry in that situation and I didn't do it, and you give yourself a pat on the back. You sort of feel good about it. I always talk about traffic. Being in traffic is a good sort of gauge of how you're going, and depending on the day, on what mood you're in, how you deal with traffic. So, and I'm a lot better than I used to be, for sure. And that's actually saying a lot, because I have behaved very badly in traffic, and I know I'm a lot better now. And I don't get quite as upset when someone cuts me off, or if I remember, I'm like, yeah, just go and do it calmly. And patience isn't like, oh, I have to be patient. It's like, just do it calmly and let it go. And it's a good feeling. And I feel really good when I remember to do it. So it's just practice. So as you become more patient and less upset about things, you're sort of enjoying it. And the next perfection is joyous effort. So you actually start enjoying it. So you're sort of trying more to practice these things and enjoying it. And you need to feel good about it. You need to feel positive about doing these things. Otherwise, you'll give it up. If it's hard work, some people over time, they go, oh, this is fabulous. This is so exciting. I want to just give everything away. And then they're like, yeah, no, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And they've given everything away. And, and you do that in your life. I mean, personally, I sort of looked back, and it was sort of every 10 years I'd be into something completely new. You change and you shift and stuff. So you have to be very careful. And if I'm not enjoying something, I walk away. Absolutely. It's, why would you? So you have to enjoy doing this and seeing the benefits of it. And then that makes it stronger as well. That really helps you, and it's very important to kind of get a sense of joy out of it. And then with that, when you're feeling, and this is a gauge over time with your meditation, you develop better concentration, because you're not stressing so much about the past or the future, or you're not getting so upset about things, and you're able to just stay in the moment. And it's easier. because you've done all this, you're doing these things in your life that actually help you to stay calmer, it's much easier to focus. And then with your meditation, it's all down to meditation. Your meditation gets stronger and you just get better and better at it. And then eventually the final perfection is wisdom. And there's different sorts of wisdom. The wisdom of making right decisions, just everyday wisdom of doing the right thing and being able to understand what's going on. Sometimes you just don't even understand a situation or a person, but you'll develop the wisdom to see a bit better because you're not thinking me, which is blocking your vision. It's clouding the way you look at things. So as you develop your concentration and your joyous effort and your patience and your morality, and as you develop these things, you're able to actually focus much better when you sit down to meditate. And then the other form of wisdom is the wisdom actually understanding, really deeply understanding impermanence and the transient nature of everything, and seeing that the grasping onto things is a completely futile way to function. And then when you see through that you can actually perceive what they call this thing called emptiness, and you rather than it being a sort of sense of despair, it's like it's a freedom to understand that there is no need to be grasping onto things, and that you can live and exist and be peaceful and happy without it. So that's the path, really. That's sort of everything. And so we will start with a bit of breathing meditation, and I'll talk a bit more about the mind, and then we'll do another meditation. So we start with the breath because you can use the breath very easily. It's always there. It's not something you have to conjure up. It's something that we have with us all the time. It's got no colour or shape. It's just a clear thing that we're focusing on, and it's a really good way to start to stop the discursive mind. Our mind is always jumping all over the place. And so they say, actually Lama Tsongkhapa, who basically he wrote the Lam Rim, the original, I think it was Lama Tsongkhapa who started it all, or it might have been a teacher, I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry. For the discursive mind, the meditation on the breath is really good. So it's something you can do anytime, anywhere, and it just stops the mind going to the past and the future and jumping all over the place, getting upset about things, and you just focus in on the breath. I was going to say something else about it. Anyway. The other thing was that this is not just a beginner's practice. It's something that you do at every level, and you can do the breathing meditation to stabilise your mind, and then move into another meditation. So they have a thing called the 7-point meditation posture, and the main thing is to have the spine straight so that the energy is travelling. We've all heard of chakras in this day and age, and so you keep your spine straight so the energy can travel through your mind and your body, the energies. cross-legged if you can. They say that the full lotus is the optimal way to meditate, but I don't see many people able to do that. I certainly can't. So just in the most comfortable cross-legged position with your spine straight. The Tibetans put the left hand down and the right hand on top, and they touch just touching the thumbs, and you sort of point the thumbs inwards towards your belly, and that's an energy thing as well. And then the arms are loosely, slightly away from the body. Relax your shoulders. I have, I'll find myself sort of tensing up. I'll be concentrating so much and my shoulders have risen up, so that's not good. You just need to be relaxed. Tilt your head slightly forward, but not too far forward, but then not right up either. You get distracted with the head up, looking up too high, and you get a bit dozy and nod off if your head's too far facing down. The eyes should be just slightly open with a bit of light coming in. Another thing, you closing your eyes is just automatically your body thinks you're going to sleep. So you have your eyes, they do say to just stare to the tip of the nose, but I sort of have them closed a little bit more than that. I think the Tibetans have flatter noses than us, so you're just staring downwards. The lips just slightly parted and the tongue at the top of the palate behind the teeth. It's just a relaxed way. If you're meditating for a long time, that actually helps the saliva. So now just bringing the mind inward. And focusing your mind on the breath. And you can do this just as an activity with your mind, just following the breath, following the breath in and then the outward breath. And one round of breathing in and breathing out is one. And counting the breath actually helps with the focus. So just letting go of all of your thoughts, focusing on the in and the out movement of the breath. And you can count up to 7 or 21. And if you lose your count, just bring yourself back, just focusing on the breath. Letting go of any thoughts. You can come back to them later, just let them pass. So don't try to control your breath, just breathe normally and gently. Thoughts will appear and your attention will be distracted by them. But as soon as you realise this has happened, just bring your mind back to the breath. Learn to have a neutral attitude towards your thoughts, being neither attracted nor repulsed. In other words, don't react with dislike or worry or excitement or clinging to any thought, image or feeling that arises. Merely notice its existence and return your attention to the breath. Be patient and persistent, and eventually the thoughts will subside. It may be helpful to think that your mind is like the sky and thoughts are like clouds. Clouds come and go in the sky. They don't stay long, nor do they alter the natural stillness and spaciousness of the sky. In the same way, thoughts come and go in the clear space of your mind. They are transient and momentary. Simply notice them and let them go, bringing your attention back again and again to the breath. The thoughts will disappear on their own. Okay. Just bring your mind back to the room. It actually sounds like a simple practice, but it is hard to do. A friend of mine said she's tried, and she said, "Oh, I can't do that." So that was that. And so it's a constant sort of. It's like going to the gym. You know, you can't just go in and pick up the heavy weights. You have to sort of start small and do small amounts of time. It's better to quality rather than quantity. And if you're finding that you're really distracted or something is really playing on your mind, then you get up and have a break and don't try and force it. It's good to have an actual place in your home or somewhere that you like to go and sit to do it. And then that can become, if you have a sort of regular place that you sit, then it becomes a kind of, you associate with that place, meditation, and you can sort of go there and feel happy to go there. Yeah, okay, so we'll talk about, I'll go on some more about the clarity of the mind, and then we'll do another meditation looking at the clarity of the mind. So, the mind is not the body, it's not physical, but it actually can have an impact on the physical, and the physical has an impact. They're interdependent, but the mind is combination of its own parts. The body has its own parts. The mind is momentary, so the previous moment of mind affects this moment of mind, affects the next moment of mind. So whatever you put in there affects the future, affects your next thoughts, and that affects your next thoughts. And that's partly how karma works, is that you've put everything into your mind, and that's going to have a result. It's going to have an effect on future moments of mind, whether negative or positive. And I was looking at a video of Lama Yeshe saying everything that you put into your mind is going to have an effect. Everything has a cause and effect. Everything has an impact. So if you put in negative things into your mind, they stay there and they come back to you as negative. And those negative things will be triggered by some causes and conditions that could be external, that generally are, it's a person or a situation. But because you've planted these seeds in your mind, they're triggered. And that's when anger and attachment and everything happens. That's my understanding of how it works. It's but it kind of makes sense. So, and Lama Yeshe was going, it's tick, 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 tick. That's what we're doing all the time. And we can't escape it. So the more positive stuff you put in, the more positive will be reflected back to you. And that makes sense too. But, so, because we don't really understand this, our egos are grasping it. No, it's real. That car is fabulous. That person is fabulous. Chocolate cake is the best thing, and we exaggerate. We project onto things because we just really can't. Well, we've never thought about it before, but it's hard to grasp the idea that everything is transient and impermanent, and that's all there is. And our mind is transient and impermanent, but we go around saying, I'm an angry person, or, it's just the way I am, I can't change, it's just the way I am. And I've always been like that, and I can't change. I don't know how often I've heard people say I can't change. So we solidify everything, and we make it, well, that's just the way it is, and it's just the way I am, and these things that I want are very real, and they're going to make me happy. And, being angry gets me what I want, or, but some people think, anger is a tool to use. And so we just sort of put layers and layers onto things and end up just causing more and more problems for ourselves. It just gets harder and harder as we go along. And funny, like getting older, it's not getting any easier. It's sort of, you'd think that you'd work your life out and that things would get easier, but it doesn't seem to be going that way, So it's a constant battle. So if we can get this perspective on things, yes, things will keep happening, things will keep going wrong or whatever, but with a perspective of it's just not that important. It's just not that important. And by being able to let go of our anger and our attachment and everything, you actually do start to relax and feel a bit better. And then it flares up again because our habits are very, very deep and very hard to break. So with our meditation, that's what we're working on. We're trying to sort of create habits, different habits of mind that we've never done before. So, by doing meditation, we generally, you can learn to soften your attitudes to negative people, especially. For me, in my workplace, dealing with some people has been very difficult. And if I can sort of think about them, where they're coming from, what's causing them to behave that way, that can actually help. But also by just seeing the transitoriness of this, that some of these expressions that we have, this too will pass, and that enemies can become friends, and I've had that happen in my life as well. So that things can change, and our projections onto people may not be. Sometimes you don't have all the information and you're projecting onto a situation and then you find out something else. So that was for real. You saw it that way and responded to it that way. And then you find out some other information, something else completely different is going on, and you go, oh my God. That's how Buddhism says everything in life is like. That we're responding to everything, and we don't understand really how things exist, or we wouldn't be stressing out and having all this angst if we actually understood. So this meditation just helps us to actually look more closely at our mind and how it's working and what's happening. Another way they describe it is the negativities are like waves on the top of the ocean, and deep down in the ocean's very still and calm, and all this stuff's going on the surface, and it's just surface. What we're experiencing is just surface. So that if we can really get in touch with our mind, we'll see how I hope that makes sense. Well, okay. So we'll get back into meditation posture. Just get comfortable. And focusing on the breath again. Bring the mind inward. Begin by breathing in deeply through both nostrils, bringing the air down to the stomach, holding it for a moment, and then exhaling slowly and gently through your pursed lips. Repeat this 2 more times, breathing deeply right down to the abdomen, and then gently releasing the breath. Then breathe normally in and out through your nose. Observe your breathing without thinking, without conceptualizing. Once your awareness has become sharp, turn your attention to the clarity of your consciousness. Your consciousness or mind is whatever you are experiencing at the moment. Sensations in your body, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sounds, and so forth. The nature of each of these experiences is clarity, without form or colour, space-like pure awareness. Initially, it might be difficult to find the actual object that is the clarity. If so, meditate on a mental image of clarity. One way to generate such an image is to visualize space. Imagine lying on a hilltop and staring up at a sky that is completely clear and free of clouds. Concentrate on this vast, unobstructed emptiness. Imagine that it flows down and embraces you and your surroundings. Everything becomes empty like space. Hold this experience and feel that the nature of your mind is like this clear, empty space. Thoughts and distractions will arise, but don't react to them. Neither follow them nor reject them. Remember that they are clear by nature, without substance. Simply watch them come and go, then return to the awareness of the mind's clarity. There's no need to wonder what the mind is, simply observe it. Its clear nature, which is like infinite empty space. Concentration means holding the mind on an object continuously without forgetting it. The automatic result of concentration is awareness, which is free of concepts. A light does not need to think, I am dispelling darkness, it simply illuminates. Awareness is the inner light that enables us to see things more clearly. It dispels the heaviness of how things appear to us, thus weakening our clinging or aversion to them. So we'll just conclude the meditation by think about any positive energy that we've created and dedicate it to happiness and well-being and welfare of others. And just bring your mind back to the room. It's always good to have a little dedication at the end of a meditation so that that energy, again, it's an imprint on your mind, the energy is not lost. So that if you go out and get grumpy in traffic, you've saved that energy for later. So, are there any questions? I'll open it up to questions now if people have any thoughts. I've kept...
Can I just ask, how does Buddhism take account of feelings as well as mind and clarity of mind?
Feelings are of the mind. Everything that we experience, the definition of mind is clear and knowing. So it's this clear space, but it's like a mirror. So it reflects everything. And our feelings are part of that reflection. So any emotions that come up are part of mind as well. And in fact, there's descriptions of how we perceive, or in the Heart Sutra it says there is no eye, there is no ear, there is no nose, there is no tongue, there is no mind. And what that means is no thoughts, no feelings, no sensations, no compositional factors, no consciousness. So all of those things, it's not saying they don't exist, but they don't exist in the way that we think that they exist. So it's this thing again of perception. So feelings is included in that, and what it's saying is that everything that we perceive, whether it's touch, it sends a message to your brain and creates an image in your brain of feeling of this wood, this table. There's no inherent feeling of this table. It's sending a message through my nerves to my brain to tell me that I'm feeling something. And it's like if you're feeling pain and the doctor gives you some painkiller, you stop feeling it. But whatever was happening is still happening. But you've stopped feeling it because it's affected, it's done something in your brain that's shut off that thing. So your feeling is actually in your brain. So it's all happening from brain. And the brain is the synapses, the electrical things that are part of our perception. But awareness isn't the brain. It's just this interdependence that we have with physical matter that affects the way we perceive things. So that they say the mind is this, it's non-physical. And that moves on into, you can talk about reincarnation, because the mind is not the body. And when the body passes away, what happens to the mind? So that's another whole big sort of question. But in fact, everything that we feel, whether we think we're feeling it solidly or we're feeling it in our heart, is mind. It's all mind, it's all perception, and it's all this experience that is reflected in our mind. And there are schools of Buddhism, there's four different sort of levels of the tenets that they talk about, and one of them is that it's called mind only. And they actually say there is nothing out there, that it's all being generated from your mind. And that's, but the higher school, which is the final answer, says no, that's not right either. There is a kind of external thing, but we're perceiving it wrong. But everything that we perceive, feel, think, touch, smell is in the mind, is reflected in the mind, which is huge. And that's kind of, it's one of the things that you study and you think about, and it's a constant through your studies to think this way, to think about these things. And that slowly, your perception shifts a little bit. So that if you can control your mind, then you have that gives you power, that gives you the ability to control how you perceive things and how you feel about things and how you think. And that there is, we'll talk about, the impermanence is real, we know that. But we perceive things as solid and permanent. But we know they're not. So it's not like this is making up sort of all this spiritual hoo-ha. It's this is scientific. And the Dalai Lama says it's not a religion, it's a science, Buddhism. I've heard him say that, it's not a religion. Nobody's asking anybody to believe anything. It does come down to just logic and scientific analysis. And they say we've got 84,000 negativities in us and there are 84,000 antidotes. So you study and you study and you study and you think about these things. The other thing that Dalai Lama says, my religion is simple, my religion is kindness. And you always have to talk about kindness and compassion with all of this as well. And that they're seen, positive minds are seen to be more valid than negative minds, because positive minds of love and compassion develop your mind, help your mind open, loosens your mind. It gives you the ability to see the clarity of your mind. So love and compassion are seen as really positive and helpful and vital, actually. And the negative minds are what clouds us. It just brings us back to, it's just this sort of cloudiness. We can't see it. So, are there any more thoughts or questions? Okay, next week I might talk a bit more about attachment and anger and stuff like that, and we can really go into it. It helps. And then